Hello and welcome to episode 33 of Tom's Hirschsprung's podcast. A special guest with me today, I have Laurie, who runs the campaign Hirschsprung's Aware Bears on Facebook, and we'll talk about that later on, amongst many other things as well. Welcome, Laurie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on. Now, we were sort of chatting beforehand, and there's lots of really interesting nuggets of information that we will bring up a little bit later on. But I'd like to start, if I may, just with your daughter, Alexis, who's born in 1986 and diagnosed with Hirschsprung's. The story of Alexis's diagnosis is out there on the Reach HD website, but we thought we'd go through it just as us as well. So I'd like to start, if I may, just from the very beginning. So Alexis is born, comes from home from hospital, and sort of all the normal symptoms, if you will, of Hirschsprung's are there. The whole sort of not feeding a great deal and throwing up and everything from there. At what point did you start to think there's something a bit amiss here?
Within the week, I was trying to feed her. She was projectile vomiting, and she hadn't had a bowel movement the whole week that we came home from the hospital. So, of course, I notified the doctor, and he took a look at her, and he didn't seem to think anything was too unusual, but we got her going. But then she was going consistently, like an applesauce consistency, for days. So took her back to the doctor. Oh, well, now let's put her on, we had her on a stool softener. Now let's put her on something to make it harder. This was just back and forth. Went on for 4 weeks till finally she got the bloated belly and really loud gas rumblings. I knew she was very uncomfortable. At that point, they did hospitalize her. And we were in the hospital a few days, and they did get her to pass quite a constipated nugget. And they said that's what it was. They think she had an anal stenosis, a small canal, from birth. So we just had to stretch that and do therapy like that. So that improved a little bit, but then we were right back where we. So at 3 months old, they took another look at her. Who ended up being our pediatric surgeon. He was pretty sure she had Hirschsprung's, but we couldn't get that clinical diagnosis. So young parents, we were like, no, we don't want to cut into her. We don't want this colostomy bag you're telling us about. So we didn't allow them to do that at 3 months old. And then we went up to 6 months where she started solid foods. Excuse me. And that didn't work at all. And then is when she got the major blockage, hospitalized for 3 weeks, emergency surgery, finally diagnosed with Hirschsprung's.
Right. So it very sort of similar story, I think, to a lot of people around that age, or certainly the people I've spoken to, me included, where you do have to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to really sort of fight, I guess, for that diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, speaking to people who've had children either recently or children with Hirschsprung's recently or within the last sort of 5 or 10 years, I'm seeing more of a trend towards that improving, thankfully. I'm seeing a lot more earlier diagnosis. And I think just sort of raising awareness, what you do with the bears, and obviously what lots of people do around the world, really kind of helps with that. If we can get more awareness out there, get HD diagnosed sort of quicker, obviously the better for everybody.
Absolutely. Just for parents to know such a condition does exist.
Yeah.
because you can't see it. You can't see it except for the bloated belly and the symptoms. But to put a name to it, that's a tremendous help in dealing with it.
Yeah, hugely. And I know sort of from my mum's experience as well, having to then go and explain to doctors what Hirschsprung's is. Did you have that as well, or did the doctors sort of know what Hirschsprung's is?
My local doctors were totally lost, but we were very lucky to have the Hirschsprung's guru about an hour away from us in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And he treated everyone around here for Hirschsprung's. And we have an Amish community in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, about another hour away from us, where there's a lot of Hirschsprungs because they intermarry in families a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Amish, but so there's a lot in that community. He was dealing with all of those. So he was the expert around here. So he had to convince me that she had Hirschsprung's.
Wow.
Yeah, he absolutely saved her life as she was dying.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. And just on family, I know we were talking for a little bit off air, and you've done quite a lot of family history research into Hirschsprung. What types of things did you find when you were researching?
Well, before we had it, we had friends, very good friends of ours, whose son had Hirschsprung. So when they started talking to us about it, we knew what they were talking about. And I thought that was kind of weird. So at a family picnic, I discovered that another second cousin's child had Hirschsprung's. And I'm like, that is odd. So started looking into the genealogy, found that the mother of that child was also a cousin to me on my side, as well as her husband, a cousin to my husband. Their union created a Hirschsprung's child. So I thought, well, I'm going to look back in time in my other friend's family, see if we're related anywhere. And I found us related to common ancestors back in the 1800s. Our families intermingled. And 4 generations later, here is this current child with Hirschsprung's. So that was, incredible to me. And then 2 or 3 years later, another child was born. And I thought, I'm going to look at his genealogy. He has Hirschsprung's. Found those common ancestors. And then a few years later, I put on a family blog somewhere about if anyone has any connections to Hirschsprung's, please contact me. I get this phone call from a woman, again, in Harrisburg, an hour away. She said, my heart sank when I read that. I'm into genealogy of our family, and we just lost our son last year to Hirschsprung's. So we connected back to being related to him as well. They didn't know what it was. He only lived 11 days. Had she seen that a year before, maybe he could have been saved, but he was not.
Wow, it's incredible that goes back so many different generations from, and so many relatives and people sort of in sort of close proximity to you. I have been doing a little bit of sort of research and digging through the podcast and trying to find the, I guess, percentage of people diagnosed with Hirschsprung's. So if I was to have a child, for example, what would be the chances, et cetera, et cetera. And there doesn't seem to be necessarily a concrete, it's going to be this in this, or not, for example, like there's more of a concrete, it's 1 in 5,000 just general children, babies that are born. And it's a 4-to-1 ratio boys to girls as well, which is something else that really shocked me, because obviously having Hirschsprung's, Alexis obviously female having Hirschsprung's, you then end up sort of being doubly rare, I guess.
Yes. And in this little analysis I did of these 5 kids, she's the only female. there's 4 boys. Now, does that just mean that's like 25,000 people that we're talking about? Or is there something to that? Because if it's 1 in 5,000 is Hirschsprungs, but only the 5th one of them is a girl, to me, I think a girl is 1 girl and 25,000 people have Hirschsprungs.
Yes. Sorry, I was just doing the mental maths in my brain for a second.
But, and I realize, now there's total colonic, there's long segment, and those have different percentages. Alexis was actually short segment Hirschsprungs, but because it went 6 months, she had to be treated as long segment. A whole lot more of her intestine was removed than if we'd have gotten it within the first week or 2. So a lot of her colon was damaged. So she had an ileostomy instead of a colostomy. So, yeah. But, that's how I look at it for a girl. Now, whether that's correct or not, I don't know, because, like I say, you'd have to categorize total colonic and long segments. Yeah.
Way above my mental capacity. I think I'll stick to doing what I do and leave that to doctors and experts, because I know various stats, but in terms of short segment, long segment, total colonic, I don't know.
Well, I think in total colonic, you may have a 50-50 chance of passing it on.
Right.
There is a chart on the study website that we've been involved in, Dr. Chakravarti at New York University. And it has a chart that if you were a male with short segment, here's your percentage risk. If you're female with long segment, here's your percentage risk. So Alexis is, from what I could tell of that chart, she was at about 29% of passing it on to her children.
Right. Yes. And I wanted to move on to that as well, because on the story on the website is very much Alexis in the early days, early months. And then at the end of the story, it doesn't mention that she then gets married, which is fantastic, and had 3 children as well, none of which have Hirschsprungs. Yes, fantastic. Less stress, I imagine. Now, I know you've mentioned this story to me and told the story of how Alexis' children came to be and not diagnosed with Hirschsprungs. Did you want to share that story as well?
Yes. After she was married, for about 1 year to 2 years, she was attempting to have children, to get pregnant, and it wasn't happening. So again, off to the doctors to devastatingly learn that scar tissue from her babyhood surgeries had invaded her reproductive organs, crushed her fallopian tubes. So it was not possible for her to get pregnant naturally. She had a cyst on her 1 ovary, and so that ovary and tube had to be removed. They didn't even see her 2nd ovary because it was so encased in scar tissue. Devastating. So they talked to her about possibilities of IVF, if they can find her other ovary, if they can harvest eggs. So exploratory surgery, thank God, found her other ovary, was able to get eggs. And she started on the IVF path. Ups and downs. I mean, you're so hopeful and then it doesn't work. And she'd gone through 10 different transfers of eggs, 10 times hoping to be pregnant. On the 6th time, of course, it's very expensive too. They were running out of money. So thank goodness on the 6th time she got pregnant. And great pregnancy, had to have C-section because of all her scarring in her abdomen, but delivered a healthy baby girl. She'll be 9 here in 2 months. So then it went a few years. They thought that would be their only child after what they went through. But she got baby fever again, and her doctors were in favor of her trying again, said her womb was great, she could do it. So went through it all again. A lot of more disappointments. It didn't work. It didn't work. We were down to 2 embryos. Implanted one, beautiful, healthy baby boy. We were ecstatic. 2-3 years later, it's like, okay, we have 1 embryo left. Are we going to try again, whatever? And they told her it probably would not take. So her options were to let the egg expire, which we don't believe in. Donate it to another couple who couldn't have children, which was hard for us to grasp that one of our children would be elsewhere. And, or implant. Work. Beautiful baby boy, healthy baby boy born. He had some issues. He was very premature, but he's 3 today and great. So we're very blessed.
Fantastic. That's brilliant news. And congratulations as well.
Thank you.
And none with Hirschsprungs as well, which I'm not sure the percentage, or I'd no idea how on earth were you given a kind of, was your daughter given a kind of percentage that maybe Hirschsprungs would be present, or was it just not discussed at all?
It wasn't discussed very much. They knew about it. They knew that was the reason that she was having IVF. We did not have the genetic testing. The only genetic testing we did was for that study. And again, they couldn't share that with us because it had National Institute of Health money in it, and they can't have someone have a personal gain out of that. So we don't know. We don't know if we have gene. Never been privately tested for that.
Yes.
So
you were talking to me just off air and beforehand about this testing that you just mentioned. Did you want to just expand a little bit more on that?
Oh yes. When I discovered these genetic connections, like many Hirschsprung's families, I had to be persistent. Nobody wanted to listen to me. I kept calling and talked to anyone I could about it. Finally, I got in touch with a research team at the University of Pittsburgh, convinced them to come out to my own house 4 hours away into my kitchen and draw blood from this small group of 4 families that gathered that have Hirschsprungs that are in my genetic makeup. So they did that, and they did not see what they thought they would see when they went back and studied the DNA. They were disappointed at first. But then a few months later, they recontacted me, asked me to sign off on all of these studies and stuff again, because they found something very interesting. And they wanted to publish a paper on what's called junk DNA. They thought it was previously DNA that didn't mean anything, and come to find out it's very important in genetic studies. They told me it wasn't just for Hirschsprung's, but for all genetic diseases, even like Parkinson's and stuff. They learned a lot about this junk DNA that they thought wasn't important before. Now, they couldn't tell me anything more than that, but they did tell me that we contributed a very important piece of information on genetics. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, that's but obviously they couldn't tell you because of the funding and the people and everybody who was involved. But that is interesting to know that you did contribute in a huge way, which again, any sort of Hirschsprung study I think is fantastic to have.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic to know. Another subject that I mentioned at the very beginning was your Hirschsprung's Aware Bears, which I think is how I found you in the first place. Hirschsprung's Aware Bears on Facebook. What was the sort of the how and why did that begin? Obviously the why, having a Hirschsprung's connection in the first place. But what made you think, right, I need to do something?
From back early, like 1998, I started getting involved in support groups on the internet. Alexis was around 12 years old, 13 years old. So at the time, everyone was just so happy to find each other, and it was global. So we became very good friends, mothers who are like sisters. Even today, I have some very close friends from that. So as I went through that, even though our struggles were lightening, I just like to be inspirational to the other families that I knew what they were going through, being isolated. So just, we were very supportive of each other. As things went on, I started wondering, what could I do for these children? How could I help? And it just kind of organically came about because I've sewed all my life and started making these teddy bears and thinking, somebody was sick, so I sent them. I sent them a bear. I sent them either a dog with an outfit I made or something like that. So just kind of rolled into this. Also, there's an organization here in the States called Victory Junction Gang Camp. It's a medical camp for ill kids, and they ask for people to make teddy bears as a keepsake for the kids for the week at camp. So I've done that, and in doing that, then I started thinking, well, I could do this for my Hirschsprung's kids too. And then I started putting the little patch on with a cricket saying Hirschsprung's a werebear with a top card telling what it is. A child can then maybe share that with the rest of their family, show them what they have, or give them information. So that's how that came about. I've given over 100 stuffies, teddy bears, to Victory Junction Gang Camp over the years. I've given over 50 to World Surgical Foundation, which was started by our own surgeon. He goes around the world and does free surgeries in underserved countries. So I supply teddy bears to him for the children, for comfort and so forth. So it's just been very fun.
It's fantastic. And you've been doing this since 1998?
Well, I've been an advocate for Hirschsprung since 98. I've been doing the bears since around 2015, I'd say. Yeah. So.
Brilliant. No, that's fantastic. So yeah, nearly 10 years of teddy bears.
Yes.
Fantastic. And I see you have, I know this isn't a video podcast, it's audio, but I see you have a lot of the bears behind you. One that I was particularly interested in is the one that has bees all over it.
Okay.
Because if I'm right in saying, yes, here it is. Am I right in saying there's a link, or this, I don't know whether it's this one, I'm sure it's this one, between something to do with diabetes, is that right as well?
Well, there's not a Hirschsprung's link, but when I do bears, if I've never sold them, for my own gain, I always try to contribute to a good cause. Usually it's Hirschsprung's related, but my other daughter has type 1 diabetes. So this particular bear, I had it on eBay for charity, and I was going to donate to Diabetes Foundation. I'm finding it harder to market my bears now because I'm not as involved in the support group since my daughter's 38 years old. But it's getting harder and harder to market the bears and have people know what they are. Not to mention the expense. My shipping has doubled in the time that I started doing this. It costs me $8, $9 now just to ship one of these within the state. So my idea for this bear was to contribute to diabetes research, but I took it down because I wasn't getting very many hits on it. It's
the reason why I ask, and it's very interesting that there's a link of diabetes in your family, because my younger brother, people who don't know this, he is part of a team that runs a podcast called Team Type 1 Style. He has type 1 diabetes, and he runs a cycling team and everybody in that cycling team has type 1 diabetes. So I run the Hirschsprung's podcast. He runs a type 1 diabetes podcast. So that was just why that sort of struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
But do you have kind of a favorite as such, favorite bear?
Not particularly. Just this past April, I did make one for Victory Junction Gang Camp out of a fabric that's used on the Kyle Petty charity ride, which is something else here in America. It's a motorcycle ride that raises millions of dollars for this camp. And it's headed up by a NASCAR family who lost their son in a race. So they sent me one of their face scarves that they use on their ride that had their logo on it. And I made a big bear, my 100th bear for them, out of that. So, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I sent that off. It's the 20th anniversary for that camp. So I sent them 20 bears, which also made it 100 bear donation for me. And that last bear was made out of their own logo.
Fantastic. No, that's fantastic to hear. And just as we sort of wind down towards the end, in terms of the Hirschsprungs Aware Bears, I know you said it's quite a lot of work and everything at the moment. But what do you see as sort of the future for the Bears as such?
Yeah, I'm still working full time. We'll be retiring here in a few years. And I thought, well, maybe this is something I can push then. But there would have to be a demand for it. It's a teddy bear. I don't know if people are that interested in that kind of toy any longer. But I think it's great for a child to receive something in the mail just for them, something with their identity on it, something that has the word Hirschsprung, they can connect with. They can also raise awareness with it. So again, the cost kind of gets prohibitive at a point. I hate to have to ask for shipping money, but it gets pretty expensive. So, and, in our market, in our community, it's tough to do because, with a child with medical conditions, expense is a problem. Healthcare is expensive, no matter how you look. So we're, expecting them to be able to purchase a bear, have it shipped. It gets expensive. So yeah. I don't know what the future might be for my program.
Okay. And just very lastly, where can people find you? Find what you're up to with the bears?
Probably mostly on Facebook. It's makeadifhd.com on Facebook. Because my page started as a Make a Difference kind of page and has morphed into mostly Hirschsprung's Aware Bears. So if you go to facebook.com, make a DIFF HD, it would take you to the Hirschsprung's Aware Bear page.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Thank you so much for coming on. And also thank you so much for everything you do for children with Hirschsprungs, for the amount of bears, over 150 bears in a decade or so. So that is an awful lot of work you put in of your own time.
Yeah.
So just from everyone who's received a bear, for all of the great advocacy you do as well. I just want to say thank you ever so much, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I love talking about Hirschsprungs, raising awareness, all I can.
My pleasure.
Thank you.